What's up guys, welcome back to FishOfHex. Today's video I'm going to be showing you the entire build process for this new frag system. Now if you didn't see the previous video where I was talking about why I was taking the system down, I will go into that briefly, but overall for this video I'm going to show you the ins and outs of this new build, the pros and cons, and what are the future plans for this system. So let's go and get into it. Alright, so let's go ahead and first talk about why I was taking the system down and rebuilding it. Now, when I originally built the frag system, they were two low boys next to each other with a 60-gallon cube in between, which I used as a refugium. Now, this system was originally located underneath my guest bathroom on the first floor, and when I first moved here and I rebuilt the system, or basically set up this new one, I didn't really take into consideration the toilet overflowing or having some issues upstairs where that water would actually go. Now, unfortunately, the toilet did overflow and the water went directly on top of my lighting as well as into my frag system, causing, of course, issues with that. Now, was that the main reason why I decided to actually break the system down? No, that was just one more notch in the belt, but basically, the real reason behind taking it down is over the last couple months, I've started to lose SPS, specifically acropora. Now, it wasn't anything that was drastic. I was just starting to get some bleaching, lighter in color, and then eventually it would die off. My system's been pretty consistent for a while. I've been dealing with coral frags for quite some time now, so I just knew that there was something going on. Now, my water parameters have been stable, consistent, no major changes. And I test weekly for that system just to make sure that it stays consistent due to frags coming in and out, cutting coral and all that kind of stuff. You really got to stay on top of the alkalinity specifically, especially on an SPS frag tank. Now, with that being said, everything was rock solid for a very long time, but I was still losing coral and I couldn't figure out why. I went ahead and tested the system with multiple test kits, just maybe something was up with mine. I wasn't getting proper readings, or maybe my alkalinity was a lot higher than I was showing on test kits. And no, it didn't work out. I tried 3 different HANA checkers as well as the Red Sea, and my alkalinity was pretty much within 1 DKH on all of those test kits, so it definitely wasn't something like that. And I also went ahead and took the refugium apart, took out all the rock, looked through with a flashlight, underwater camera, trying to find screws, all sorts of stuff. I cleaned out everything, sucked it out, made it nice and clean, and just didn't find anything. So basically, I kind of came to the conclusion that something was in the water. I didn't know how it was getting in there, but something was causing issues with my SPS. And frankly, after losing a couple $1,000s worth of coral, it was time to take the system down, do a nice hard reboot on it, make some adjustments and some changes, and hopefully everything will go in a better direction. All right, now that you guys have a quick rundown on why I was deciding to break this system down, let's talk about what I plan on building and the reason behind it. What I wanted to do originally is just relocate the low boys somewhere else in the fish room, keep them side by side, keep the stands the way they were, keep the frag system or the refugium the way it was, but there just wasn't any room anywhere else besides removing my desk, and it just didn't work out. So I had to think of a different way of doing it. Now, what I decided to do is go ahead and basically make a box and keep everything enclosed except for the front of the box and stack both of my low boys. Now, because of the location where I was going to put the system, I had to remove the 60-gallon refugium, which was totally fine. It was just extra water, and of course it served a purpose for growing macroalgae, but I went ahead and turned half of my 40-gallon breeder sump into a refugium, and that's working out just fine. One thing that I definitely removed from the system was all of the old rock that I had from the 125 and beyond. What I did is, because all this stuff originally came out of the 125, at least 90% of the coral that I do sell came from that old system. And of course, what comes with that is all the rock that was in that system. Now, all that stuff was located in that 60-gallon cube, as well as some of the new Pucani that was left over from the 300-gallon build. So I had quite a bit of Pucani in there, or other types of rock that I've had for over the last few years. And it just sat in there. It was great biological filtration, but what I'm thinking is that that rock was pretty old. Some of it actually was from a tank that was over 10 years old that I got from a friend, and I just used it because I had it and really didn't take into consideration that maybe there was something up with the rock over time. Now, of course, that stuff was in the 125 and it never had any ill effects, so I didn't really think anything of it, and still to this day I think it was just old rock and not really a big deal. But either way, I went ahead and I removed a ton of rock, at least 60 pounds of Pucani, and I threw out the majority of the older stuff, and then the Pucani that was in there I let sit outside for a couple weeks, let it completely die, and I'm going to go ahead and cure that stuff in a 55-gallon barrel and probably sell it throughout the next few months. But other than that, I removed a ton of rock, removed 2 out of the 4 marine pier blocks that I have, which are the 8x8 by 4 inch. Now, these marine pier blocks were originally in the 125, and they were a couple years old, so I went ahead and actually just tossed those out, and now I only have 2 brand new ones that are at least 3 to 4 months old. So right now in my 40-gallon sump, I have approximately 20 to 30 pounds of Pucani, which came from the 300-gallon build, as well as those 2 marine pure blocks, and that's all I have for biological filtration. Now, I only have a few fish in this system, and it is only 2 low boys, so the demand for a lot of biological filtration just isn't there, so I'm definitely good for what I have so far. While we're on the topic of filtration, let's go and talk about some of the equipment that I have on the system. Now, I am using a Bubble Magus Curve 7 protein skimmer, which came from the original 125, and I am using the dual reactor, again, that came from that system. Now, the reactor itself has a very small amount of GFO and a small amount of carbon. Now, I don't like to use a lot of GFO, and I mentioned in a previous video why. I just feel that it strips the tank too much, but I do like to keep it in there just to keep phosphates down as low as I can get them. Now, I am using a ton of macroalgae. There's a whole bunch of chlorpa in there, and of course, chaetomorpha, and that stuff is growing like weeds, and I'm pulling it out every week. So it's definitely doing well underneath that UFO light, which again, I have to make a video on that light, a whole kind of review, so stay tuned for that. But other than that, that's all the filtration I have for the system. It's very small, very compact, and it's very easy to take care of. All right, now that we're talking about equipment, let me go ahead and finish off what else I'm using on this system. Now, when it comes to the return pump, I'm using a Jaybo DCS 12,000. It's the same return pump that I have on my 300 gallon. Now, of course, it is dialed down to probably the 3rd notch just because it is so powerful. And that is connected to a very simple manifold that has 3 ball valves, 1 for the dual reactor and 1 for each one of those low boys. Now, I do have the reactor wide open because I'm using a gate valve on the end of that reactor to determine how much flow goes to the GFO. But I am dialing back the ones going to each one of the low boys just to make sure that it doesn't put too much water in the tank and cause them to gurgle and all that kind of stuff. And of course, that will all flow back over to the left-hand side of that 40-gallon breeder sump, which has no baffles in it, but it is technically separated with the marine pure and the Pucani rock. Now, I am using 3 300-watt heaters in here, and they're just an off-brand off eBay, and they're all connected to my Apex. So when one starts to die, I can kind of see the fluctuation on the graph there, and I'll just go ahead and see which one is dead, replace it, and kind of just go about my business. They're relatively cheap. I think I can get 2 of the heaters for like 12 bucks, and yeah, they're relatively cheap, and I get about a year and a half out of each one of them, so it's a good deal for me. As you guys can see, I'm using the Neptune Apex controller here, which actually takes care of all 3 of the tanks in the fish room. Now, for this setup here, I have 2 variable dimming modules, which are connected to 3 SP reef lights, and I do plan on either adding 3 more SP reef lights for the bottom tank or 3 Mars Aquas. Again, will connect to that variable dimming module, which will allow me to ramp the lights up and down throughout the day. Now, I am using the ATK auto top-off system with a 20-gallon long reservoir. I was originally using the 20-gallon high, but I just couldn't fit it underneath that tank, so I went ahead and picked up another one from the Petco $1 per gallon sale, and it worked out great. Now, the last piece of equipment that I have here is the Jaybo DP4 dosing pump. Now, this is one of my original ones from the 125, and it works, and it hasn't messed up, and it stays calibrated. So this was the old model. The one I just added to the 30-gallon Chaeto reactor is a newer model that I've had issues with, but this one works. I'm not going to mess with it. I just have to adjust the dosing amounts based on the needs of the tank. Other than that, I leave it alone. It does its thing, and I really like this pump for the reason that it's the older model and it actually works. All right, now that we have all that out of the way, let's go ahead and talk about how the system's doing now that it's been up for about a week and a half. I will say, without a doubt, it's doing a lot better. Getting better polyp extension, coloration starting to come back, acropora look a lot happier. But unfortunately, I think it came a little too late for the simple fact that I lost a ton of coral. I'm talking 90% of the coral that I had in that system. I literally had a 5-gallon bucket full of just skeletons and frag plugs. I was going through and counting the frag plugs, doing a rough estimate of how much money I lost, and I stopped at $15,000 because I couldn't handle counting anymore. So I've lost a ton of money in coral, and the only upside to it, because we got to look at the positive things in life, it was coral that came from the 125, so I didn't directly go out and buy it from a wholesaler, cut it up, and then have it die and lose that money directly. So it was stuff that I grew over a couple years that I had left over. So I have to be thankful for what I do have and kind of how it played out. But overall, 15 grand is 15 grand, and that's money that I could have used for Reefapalooza, for the new 300-gallon build, and just to expand the business and do bigger and better things. And of course, the reef tank for veterans, that's all money that I could have used for that. And it's just one of those things that you kind of have to step back, separate yourself from it, and realize that you have to take risks. Things happen. Sometimes things are out of your control, and it's just pretty much how you pick yourself up and move forward. And that's really what I'm doing right now. I am gathering money through builds and all sorts of stuff through clients, and of course, YouTube and donations, all kind of stuff. I will be ordering a ton of coral here within the next few weeks, getting some more lighting for that lower low boy. And I'm just going to go ahead and start the process over, cutting coral up, reselling it, and just reinvesting it, and just kind of continuing to do that all the way up to Reefapalooza, and of course moving on beyond that. So it will be a little bit before the coral sales are back up on the website. I'm looking at least a month and a half until I can get that stuff back up. But don't worry, guys, it's going to happen. Things will be back to normal. It's just going to take a little bit of time. All right, well, that's about it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you have any questions about this build, put them in the comment section below, and I will do my best to get back to you as soon as I can. Now, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you didn't like the video, definitely give it a thumbs down. Either way, thumbs up, thumbs down, they definitely help me out with my analytics, so I appreciate those. And yeah, that's about it, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Peace.